Hey there, it's Dave Altavilla. Hey there, it's Dave Altavilla, and welcome to Two and a Half Geeks. This week we have another half geek. I don't know if he's a half geek really with us. I've got Marco Chiappetta, who's our full geek, and then we've got, hey guys, this is Austin, Austin Evans from from the YouTube fame. We got Austin Evans with us. How you doing, Austin? Good to have you with us today, buddy.
Not too bad. Yeah, I approve of being the half geek. I think I'm about like half as tall as most geeks, so I'll take it.
I think, I really think, yeah, in stature, you're definitely not half geek, but maybe height, I don't know. I haven't met you in person. Marco has, and compared to Marco, who's a pretty tall guy.
Yeah, exactly.
How you doing, Marco?
I'm doing pretty good. I can't really complain. The weather's nice. We're working out from under a nice pile of hardware lately, so things are good.
Amen, amen. We are working out from a hefty pile of hardware lately, and
Is it hot
I have to
hardware?
apologize. What's that?
Is it hot hardware?
Hefty, hot pile of hardware. Damn it. Yeah, so I have to apologize myself. I'm probably a little nasally, a little bit under the weather today, but I'll try and shake it. But yeah, we've got a whole list of good stuff today, from laptops to super fast SSDs to big beautiful monitors. And so let's dive right in. Marco, you took a look at AMD's new FreeSync monitor technologies, and specifically an LG 34-inch panel, again from LG, widescreen display. Tell us a little bit about it.
So I did. AMD's been talking about FreeSync since about a few months after NVIDIA launched G-Sync. So FreeSync is technically an open standard. It's leveraging technologies that were already in the DisplayPort embedded standard, and AMD worked with a number of monitor manufacturers to enable the tech in new screens, and also preparing the software for their graphics cards to do the dynamic refresh rates or adaptive refresh rates to eliminate tearing and minimize jitter and judder and latency, input latency while gaming. So I got a chance to look at a 34-inch widescreen display. It was the LG 34UM67. So this was an IPS panel in this display with a 21:9 aspect ratio, resolution 2560 by 1080. So not super tight pixel density, but a decent quality panel, and the resolution's not so high that you need an insane amount of graphics horsepower to push it. Overall, FreeSync works as advertised. It's still early. The set of drivers that AMD released doesn't support everything across the board. Like Crossfire doesn't work just yet. Surround modes, FreeSync doesn't work in surround modes. But in terms of gaming and having that adaptive refresh rate kick in and stop the tearing and smooth things out, it's there. AMD is going to pull it off, and eventually, once all the software has caught up and more monitor manufacturers release their monitors, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, there's 11 monitors already on the way, so that'll be more than what's available in terms of G-Sync relatively quickly. Good stuff overall. If you haven't experienced an adaptive refresh rate monitor, it's kind of the thing you need to try for yourself. So maybe head to a Micro Center, or if you have a cutting-edge computer store nearby, definitely check it out because it's cool stuff.
So the difference between this and NVIDIA's G-Sync technology, NVIDIA employs some custom circuitry that enables their adaptive refresh rate to sync up with the graphics card. But this is theoretically at least less expensive and more open. How do the intricacies of that work versus what NVIDIA does?
So yes, it's definitely more open, and the advantages of FreeSync are, again, that there's no proprietary hardware in the displays. You do need to have a compatible scaler and a display that supports or that will work properly with the technology, and AMD has to enable it in the driver to work with that display, so that it's not just a plug and play and forget it kind of affair yet. The difference with NVIDIA is there's a proprietary card with an FPGA that they've programmed, and the displays require this G-Sync module to work with G-Sync. It seems on the surface that the advantage there would go to AMD because there's no proprietary stuff going on. I think NVIDIA is going to have more tricks up their sleeve. That G-Sync module is programmable, so I would not be surprised if NVIDIA had more modes coming or some new stuff happened in the future with G-Sync to differentiate it. But I think long term, the open standards are probably going to win. So maybe with the next DisplayPort standard and next-gen monitors, everybody from Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA will support a single technology. But I'm speculating there. That's not hasn't been talked about just yet.
So less tearing, less jitter and stutter. Austin, have you seen these live and in action? I've seen them. They're actually pretty impressive to my eyes. But again, it depends on the game you're looking at, how fast your frame rates are. What do you think? Have you seen these guys in action?
Yeah, I've played around with a couple of G-Sync monitors. I only really briefly was able to play around with a Freesync monitor. How does it actually compare? Like, can you see any kind of major differences? One noticeably better than the other, or is it just kind of like the same thing?
So in terms of the experience, the G-Sync monitors I've used and that I have here have a much wider range of adaptive frequencies. So in terms of the experience, if I were to just talk the monitors I've looked at, this LG display and an Asus ROG and an Acer panel I have here, the G-Sync has probably been a better experience because the panels I looked at had this much wider frequency range. The base technology functions the same. When you're in that sweet spot, that 30 to 60 frames per second where it's not too slow, where it's a slideshow, and not so fast you're not going to notice, the tearing is fixed. It goes away. It works. It works as it should. You know, and you have the reduced input latency from the mouse. It's a noticeable better experience on both FreeSync and G-Sync right now. I think they're comparable when you're in that sweet spot. When you're outside this sweet spot, NVIDIA's just had more time to tune and tweak, but eventually I think everybody's going to get to the same point.
What did you think about the actual LG monitor itself? I know it's a super, it's what, 21:9 display?
Yes.
Yeah,
21:9. The monitor itself, I liked it. It's a good quality panel. I wasn't enamored by it because I've been sitting in front of a 4K 32-inch display, an IGZO display, one of those Sharp monitors, and I'm just so used to the more uniform colors and the much tighter pixel density. I now prefer it. When I go to a 34-inch panel that's only 2560 by 1080 res, the pixel density is so much lower that it's noticeable. However, for the huge majority of people that have basic 1080p displays with crappy TN panels, it would probably be a huge upgrade, and they would love the better viewing angles and color reproduction out of an IPS panel like that.
Yeah, I know. I had played around with, I think it was one of the early AOC monitors, which was, I think it's 2560 by 1080. I think it was a little smaller. It was like 29-inch or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think the lack of vertical resolution kind of hurt that monitor for me, just because I do a lot of video editing, so having that extra vertical space was really important. It was really nice for like watching movies and playing games and stuff where you could be a little bit more immersed. But I wonder, especially with a monitor that big, having only 1080 as far as like the vertical res, was that like kind of a little bit of a problem?
Not for gaming. The advantage of that resolution for gaming, as I mentioned, is you don't need a ton of GPU horsepower to get smooth frame rates on that resolution. If you were to go with a 4K panel, 3840 by 2160, you need some monstrous GPU horsepower to keep frame rate smooth. Not the case with something like that. And again, if I make the comparison to the 1920 by 1080 panels that like 80% of people have, you end up with a ton more horizontal resolution. So same vertical resolution, but a lot more horizontally. It's like having two panels side by side. So I could see the appeal if you don't want two separate displays and you like the wide format. It's nice. It's a subjective thing, though. I would suggest someone definitely try it out first if you can find a store that has them out.
Yeah. Cool stuff. Well, let's move on to something in the realm of mobile. Austin, I'll dive in and ask you a question. What's your favorite laptop?
Right now I'm actually, yeah, really. So right now I'm testing the new 2015 MacBook Pro, the 13-inch. It's actually what I'm using right now. I like this laptop. Apple's always done a good job of making, nicely built laptops, good screens and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not super thrilled with like paying $1,300 for a dual core and having no quad core option, even like up to $2,000 and stuff. But I mean, just as far as like build quality and whatnot, I've been really enjoying this MacBook. It's been a pretty solid laptop.
Cool. All right. Well, I took a look at one of my favorite laptops. I would say it's probably one of two that come to mind. Recently, I took a look at the Dell XPS 13, new for 2015, gorgeous laptop with that near bezel-less display, right? But more recently, I took a look at Lenovo's refresh of the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. Let me share this one out for everybody right now. And so hopefully you can see it. There you go. So yeah, this is the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. As you can see, it does have a fairly wide swing hinge there, laying flat.
I'd say.
14-inch machine. Yep. 14-inch machine, and it's very thin, very light, about 3 pounds. It is built with a plastic sort of carbon fiber composite construction. That's the material. It's definitely light. It's definitely more solid feeling, but it is actually a refresh of last year's model, which is almost identical, except now, fortunately, the good folks at Lenovo this year in the 2015 version saw fit to bring us back to full mechanical function keys in the top row. Last year's model had this funky sort of adaptive touch display that mapped the function keys in different scenarios depending on whether you were web browsing or whatever. They would change in you, and half the time you were mashing the touch display, even though it wasn't mechanical, to try and get them to switch to whatever you wanted for a function key at that time. And it just didn't pan out so well. It sounded neat in practice, you know, adaptive and all that good stuff, but it didn't pan out. So they brought back the mechanical function keys in the new 2015 version, but they also revamped the machine with Intel's Broadwell technology. So now you've got 5th generation Intel Core, specifically a dual core i5 5200U, 5300U at 2.3 gigahertz base, 2.9 gigahertz turbo boost, Intel HD integrated HD 5500 graphics, and the display is 2560 by 1440. So a nice balance, 14-inch panel. For me, this is sort of my sweet spot in terms of comfort. I think a 15-inch is a little too unwieldy, certainly in the travel bag. A 13-inch is a little too cramped sometimes for me on the typing deck. 14-inch tends to be, as long as it's thin and light like this machine, right there. It just happens to be what fits me well. And I really like it. Lenovo makes some of the best keyboards in the industry for laptops. Fantastic. Only one drawback, and I got to ask you guys, maybe I'm like stuck on this. So again, nice machine, great performance, great display, fantastic keyboard, great build quality and construction. No dang SD card slot.
Ooh.
And I was like, what the? They did it again, because last year they didn't have it in there either.
That's...
So what do you guys think? Am I being too anal about that? It's kind of a big deal to me.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. I mean, having an SD card slot means, especially like for people like us who take lots of pictures and video and stuff, that means you have to carry around an external card reader. I mean, I feel like that kind of defeats the purpose of having a really nice thin and light laptop when you have to have a bag full of adapters to be able to do something as simple as, like, you know, plug in your memory cards. Yeah, I totally hear you. Yeah, I would. I for a long time I used a laptop that didn't have one, and I had to carry around like a hard drive and had to carry around like the SD card reader, and it's like, yeah, you know what, not worth it. Don't. No.
Yeah, Marco.
I see the appeal of having it integrated, and I would prefer it was there. It wouldn't be a deal breaker for me. You know, most card readers are tiny little dongles, and it would probably perform better than the built-in one if you had a fast, you know, USB 3 card reader. So not a giant issue for me, but ideally it should be integrated. Yeah. Like my favorite notebook right now, the HP Spectre X360 has one built in, and you know they were able to do it on a machine smaller than the ThinkPad. So Lenovo has the chops to put it in there. They made a decision not to put it in there.
Yeah, I don't. That's what I don't understand. You're looking at a machine here that clearly has the real estate, and you know it's built really well. You could easily fit that sucker in on a side edge, or you know, I think on a couple of notebooks I've seen that are really thin like this, you see them sort of wedged in under the front lip sometimes too. Plenty of room for it on this machine, but they just elected not to. And so for me, it's kind of like, the opportunity's there. Why didn't you take it? And I reminded the folks at Lenovo, and they're like, we know. Yeah, I'm whining at them. But other than that, it's a fantastic machine. I agree with you, Austin. I think it sort of does defeat the purpose. You've got a thin and light machine for a reason. You want to slip this thing in a bag and have it not take up a lot of room, and you don't want to fill up your bag with additional junk that weighs you down or clutters up your bag. So, yeah, that's kind of a sticking point for me. What was interesting about this machine too, though, was one of the things that the previous gen had an issue with. I thought that the panel could have been a little brighter, and this one was spec'd for a 270 nits panel, which was slightly lower than the 300 nits panel of last year. And come to find out, side by side, and I have actually had both machines, right here. Still got the last year's model that I could compare to, and it turns out the new model, even though it's spec lower, is a little bit brighter. It just tends to have a little bit better output for whatever reason if you look at them side by side. I don't know if it's better viewing angle. I think it's just overall a brighter display. So that's a nice upgrade. The other thing that's a nice upgrade is Intel's new 5th generation core technology that in the benchmarks gives you just a little bit more CPU horsepower and on the order of about 15 to 20% more GPU graphics horsepower. So you've got, a little bit of, casual gaming available to you, but certainly more horsepower for things like OpenCL assisted video production, Austin. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Does the MacBook you have there that must have 5th gen core in it, right?
I just want to jump in a sec because I know Austin's probably confused. You mentioned gaming. He's a Mac user, so he probably doesn't know what you're talking about.
I've never heard of it. I don't know. You can game on computers? You're gonna have to tell me more about this. I'm not sure what you're talking about. No, yeah. The new MacBook Pros, they've got Iris 6100 graphics, so I guess it would be a slight jump. I don't know the exact spec as far as you said 5500.
Yeah, this is 5500, and it's not Iris, so yeah, it is a jump for what you got there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like the big majority of the use cases for having a better GPU is just to be able to power these higher res displays. I remember especially when some of the bigger the 1440p panels and stuff started coming out on laptops, it would be just a slideshow sometimes of just trying to move windows and just do basic things. So I think gaming is not too easy on any of these, even with the Iris graphics and stuff. You can play. I think I was testing it out. You can play Minecraft. If you're that's it's super hardcore gaming on your computer, but yeah, I think it's mostly more to the fact of you said video editing stuff, which is definitely really helpful, and just being able to just keep Windows or OS 10 or Linux or whatever running smoothly.
Yeah, amen. And how heavy is that machine, by the way, with Iris graphics on board? It's probably a little bit heavier than this. This is a 3-pound machine for the Lenovo machine.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a little heavy. I think it's closer to 4 pounds. I think.
So yeah, here's a quick look at the X1 Carbon in my hand. But as you can see, so super thin and light. This is much more in line with the MacBook Air, competitor. Really nice touchpad. They brought back mechanical buttons on the touchpad. Last year's model had a buttonless touchpad. Of course, your little ThinkPad nub, which I never use. But the deck is what I love. It's what I get to do. What I love to do all the work on the road from. That typing deck is just, in my opinion, the best in the business. Better than anything Apple's got. Just tactile feel and being able to fly on it. But
it's a good-looking laptop too.
What's that?
It's a good-looking laptop too. It's
it's
really
sharp. And then,
really nice.
Yeah, and then the other thing we're looking at, which we'll get to in probably a couple of weeks, is this bad boy right here. Let me see if I can wake him up for you. This is the Dell M3800, and it is the first machine we've seen with an IGZO2 display. This is a 4K IGZO2 display, and I think I'm going to have a problem with it now because let's see if we can get it to wake up. But yeah, it's actually, there we go. Yeah, probably not going to be able to appreciate it, but it's a really nice 4K display. It's IGZO2 technology, so super bright, unbelievable contrast. And this is a little bit bigger machine. This is a 15-inch machine. It is thin and light. I want to say it's just south of 5 pounds. And it's got, I believe, some discrete mobile GPU technology on board as well. So stay tuned to Hot Hardware for that in the coming weeks. We will be looking at that. I believe Paul Lilly's going to take a look at this for us. I might throw it around on video before I ship it off to him. I don't know if I have time. But speaking of GPUs, Marco, you took a look at a Titan.
I did. Before we talk about it, let's just appreciate it for a moment.
Ooh.
Take a whip.
Does it come with its own soundtrack when you pull it out of the box?
It does when it's in my house.
Oh my God!
Look at this guy. So yeah, this is that's the new
Deep
bad
love.
boy. That is NVIDIA's Titan X right here. 12 gig GPU, physically the same size as a GTX 980, but the cooler is now black. Same kind of input and output configuration, clear Lexan window for the cooler. Only requires 2 power connectors. One's a 6-pin, one's an 8-pin. But at the heart of this card is a new GPU. So Titan X is based on NVIDIA's Maxwell technology, but the GPU on the card is the big giant Maxwell. This guy has 3,072 shader cores. As I mentioned, 12 gigs of RAM on board, 384-bit memory interface. So you're talking just a massive Maxwell chip, 8 billion transistors at the heart of this bad boy. So it is completely no joke. You know, as you'd expect for something this insane, huge performance versus a GTX 980. I'm just looking at Firestrike quickly, just a benchmark anybody can go download and run. Versus GTX 980, the Titan X put up a 3D Mark score of over 6,200, and 980 manages just under 5,000. Now, versus a 290X, the single GPU card, that scores a little over 5,200, so 1,000 points higher there. Versus AMD's dual GPU card versus the 295X2. 295X2 is still killer in terms of performance. It scored over 8,600, so faster than the Titan X. But it has 2 GPUs, and you have to deal with all of the multi-GPU issues like frame pacing and game compatibility and working on profiles to support certain games at multi-GPU. So there are advantages to the single GPU setup. What's really impressive to me, so I'm a huge nerd, so the performance is freaking awesome. I love super fast GPUs. This is what we get excited about here.
Say it again. I'm a huge nerd.
I'm a huge, gigantic geek of a nerd. I sweat GPU stink. But what's super impressive, now if you go back to the original Titan, the original NVIDIA Titan the GPU was built using the same manufacturing process. So that was Kepler, built on TSMC's 28-nanometer process. This is Maxwell, built on TSMC's 28-nanometer process, with I think it was about 1.5 billion more transistors. But in terms of power, you're talking about double the performance of that first Titan at basically the exact same power. That's freaking impressive. NVIDIA managed a generational leap in terms of efficiency and performance on the same manufacturing process. So they are definitely focused on bringing power down, which probably bodes well for future Tegras also. So really monstrously beautiful card at $1,000. It's tough to justify versus a $700 295X2 if you strictly look at performance. But as I mentioned, the single GPU setup, that huge 12 gig frame buffer, there are advantages to that kind of setup. Plus, it's quieter, it's cooler. It's just, for such a monster, it's an elegant graphics card.
So, Austin, have you gotten a look at a Titan, or you have to fork out $1,000 of your own money to get your hands on one?
Oh, so actually, I was at GDC, and when they just randomly showed up, like, oh, by the way, Titan X, see you next month. I was like, oh, what, huh? But no, actually, I was able to take a look at it. They had a really nice system set up in their booth. You kind of like take a look at it. And of course, it's an awesome looking card. And they had that powering a lot of the VR demos. So I tried. It was the Hobbit. It was using the Oculus Rift DK2. It was basically the Hobbit. I don't know if it was. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't DK2. It was the Crescent Ridge, something like that. Whatever the latest Oculus prototype is, I get them all mixed up.
I don't know either, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, we'll go with it. It was the Hobbit, so like you could walk through and like the dragon would come by, and the whole deal is really, really immersive, and it was entirely run on a Titan X, and it was really, really cool. So yeah, no, that card, yes, I'm right there with you, dude. just yes.
Let me put this somewhere safe.
Exactly.
Oh, God help us. Oh, hell. Yeah, no, very cool. It's impressive to see what the GPU companies do every year. Every year, Marco, we get these cards, right? And it's like, oh my God, this thing's faster than the previous gen. It's lower powered. It's quieter, and we think, we got to be there. We're not, we got to be there now. Like, photorealistic, real-time rendering on the GPU on your computer. But every year we don't quite get there. We get a lot more horsepower, but there's always another game developer out there. There's always another, use case where you suck all that GPU horsepower up, and you still can get this card to a crawl if you try on a 4K panel, right?
So you bring up an interesting point. This is actually a really good discussion to have with people. If we stayed stuck at 1080p like it seemed for I don't know how many years it was, the last few years, stuck with only the uber rich had 2560 by 1600 30-inch panels and everybody else was 1080p or below, something like this would get us damn close to photorealistic graphics at that 1080p resolution. But now 4K is getting cheap, and there's good 4K monitors you can buy without breaking the bank. And now all of a sudden, even $1,000 graphics card. So let's just talk about Crysis 3. Not a brand new game, still a graphically intense game. Crysis 3 with high quality settings and only 4x AA, no crazy pixel processing going on. It's only 22 frames a second. With $1,000 graphics card, you need $2,000 worth of GPUs to get playable frame rate out of Crysis 3 at 4K. So, excuse me, that changes the paradigm now. So we could have gotten much closer to photorealism at 1080p, but now we got a lot more pixels to push. You need a lot more horsepower to maintain smooth frame rates at those super high resolutions. So yeah, the GPU guys have gotten a lot closer, and game engines will now that the newer consoles are out, we'll see that nice leap in advancements in game engines because they're not held back by the older consoles anymore. But we still have a long way to go. There's still a lot more to do. So all of you people contemplating joining the PC master race, do it. Put some money in NVIDIA and AMD and Intel's pocket so they can keep making this crap and screw the console. Because we need a lot more power. We need more power.
Wow.
Always more power.
Wow.
Yes.
I can hear the marketing guys, the marketing weasels in their cubicles are standing up cheering right now, man. Up in Silicon Valley.
Call that fat kid at HotHardware. Yeah, call that fat kid.
I love that guy.
Well, dude, it's funny you mentioned that because when I was at GDC, they had. Did you guys see the Unreal Engine, the demo with the kite?
Yeah. So can you hear me? I did. I saw it before GDC when I was briefed on Titan X. So that is pretty impressive. What they did with that.
Austin,
you may have froze there for a second. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I froze up there. No, I was just saying that demo was, I think that's the closest I've seen to like kind of photorealism, running on an actual GPU in real time. I mean, it looked to me exactly like a Pixar movie from just a few years ago, and it was running in real time.
Yeah.
Another point that you just made pop into my head saying that. I think some people's definition of photorealism is different. That demo was impressive, but as soon as I look at it, I know it's computer generated. It's like when you can tell it's got that plasticky smooth, it's obvious CGI. It's still not photorealistic to me. I want to play a game and see graphics that I have trouble differentiating from video. I want it to be that good, and I think that we're far from that.
Yeah,
right.
I would agree with you. So let's move on to something else that can make a big difference in your PC and high performance, whether it be desktops or gaming systems. The Titan X sails off into the sunset. But let's show something a little bit smaller. This bad boy, let me flip it around, just debuted today on HotHardware.com, and this is Intel's SSD 750 series PCI Express card. Now, if you've played around with SSDs at all, you'll know that the leap from a hard drive to a solid-state drive like this, or even a SATA-based solid-state drive, is like light years in terms of a performance boost and responsiveness, just general system responsiveness. That makes a huge difference. Solid-state, obviously, You know, no mechanical parts. You're talking about flash NAND that is measured access times in sub-millisecond access times versus hard drives, which are, you know, 10, 8 millisecond access times. To SSDs, a PCI Express SSD or a standard-based SATA SSD to those types of drives, a PCI Express SSD can be another, I wouldn't say order of magnitude, but another monumental boost, sometimes 2x, 4x doubling of performance to get you by the SATA bottleneck. And the SATA bottleneck tops out right around at currently 6 gigabit per second SATA is 550 megabytes a second or something like that, on average for top-end SATA SSDs. This little fella, and PCI Express cards in general, get you north of a gigabyte, or gigabyte per second, excuse me. This guy is rated for 2.4 gigs a second read and 1.2 gigs a second write. And actually, we launched it today. It just came off of NDA at noontime Eastern today, 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. Pacific, excuse me. And it is by far the fastest consumer, I want to underscore that, consumer SSD I've ever tested or tasted. So yeah, I mean, the thing is a monster, and get this, less than $1 a gig. So you don't have to sell, you know, an organ, a kidney, what have you, to own this thing. It's actually sub $400, $389 MSRP for a 400 gig version. This happens to be the really tasty 1.2 terabyte version that retails for $1,000. I think it's $1,029 MSRP for the 1.2 terabyte.
You get that $29.
Yeah, you got to get the extra $29 for whatever, Uncle Sam or something. But yeah, easily the fastest SSD, PCI Express SSD for a consumer or desktop or enthusiast or workstation that I've ever tested. We have tested Intel's P3700 series drive, which is the enterprise version of this. And actually, this is built off the same platform, same NVMe controller, that is a lot more expensive, thousands of dollars for, you know, an 800 gig drive, for example, and it offers better performance and a lot more sort of rated endurance. I think it's like petabytes of endurance, 30-something petabytes of writes to it before it would give up the ghost. So that's the enterprise version. This is the desktop version. I think it's 219 terabyte. Did I say terabytes? Yeah. No. Yeah, I'm trying to think what the rated is on the endurance part for this drive, but it is, I have to look it up. It is, you know, I think it's 70 gigs a day. It's rated for endurance, so much more of a consumer play, but you're not gonna, unless you're doing, you know, mad video, like even more than you, like 100 times what you would do, Austin.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
This thing. Writing to it, you know, 70 gigs a day is a lot. It's rated for 219 terabytes a day, excuse me, total, terabytes total endurance. So that's fine for the average consumer, and it's blazing fast, and it's reasonable. It's, you know, it's not quite on parity with the average SATA SSD, which we're now seeing at around 50 to 60 cents a gig, but at less than $1 a gig, it's approachable for most folks now, if you have a performance desktop that you need to give a little boost to. What do you think?
So, I want one. So you said that there's a 400 gig for about $400, right?
Yeah, $389 is the MSRP on it.
Were you able to try the performance? Do you think that's going to be any different than the 1.2 terabyte, or should it be? Is it like the same number of like controllers and NAND packages, or?
Yeah, good question. Actually, it should map out to about the same performance. There may be, you know, some sort of corner cases where it'll be a little bit different. But you mentioned the NAND controller and all that good stuff. This is actually different technology than what we're used to seeing. There's basically 3 types of products in the market. There's your standard SATA drive with SATA controllers on board currently, 2.5-inch that we all know and love, and the gumstick versions of SATA drives that are in your notebook. And then there's what's called really sort of quasi hybrid versions of PCI Express cards that have SATA controllers built on the board, multiple SATA controllers rated together on the back end, and then on the front end they bridge to PCI Express, get it down into the slot, and again they raid those SATA controllers up to get you past that SATA bottleneck. And here you can see, north of a gigasecond over the PCI Express card edge in performance. And then there's sort of what they call the M2 versions of drives, gumstick versions that are out in notebooks, and we actually see them now showing up on PCI Express, mounted on top of a PCI Express card edge card. And those are built off of, again, a sort of a quasi SATA to PCI Express setup. Actually, some of them are almost native PCI Express links, but not quite. Now, NVMe, or non-volatile memory Express, NVMe Express, is a new standard that Intel and a bunch of other manufacturers have joined a consortium on. Lots of folks in there, Seagate, bunch of folks, PMC. And it is a dedicated high-speed serial link to flash directly over the PCI Express, and it's optimized sort of over PCI Express base specification, PCI Express Gen 3, and allows you to have full bandwidth, PCI Express Gen 3 by 4 in this case, bandwidth. And so what you realize is when you throw small file writes or reads to this thing, or big sequential writes and reads where these drives tend to perform best, right, when they can pipeline stuff. But small workloads to small file transfers to big sequential transfers, this thing doesn't break a sweat. And so my assumption is, although I haven't looked at the 400 gig version, you're not going to see much of a variance in performance. So that was a long way to answer your question, but there's custom controller technology by Intel on this thing that Intel built, this NVMe controller that totally optimizes access to that NAND flash and just rips through the benchmarks. It's the fastest thing we've ever laid hands on here.
Wow. Now, I can just see loading up a gaming PC with one of those. Like, for $400, that's not like crazy money, like you said. Like, that's actually something that's kind of at least somewhat reasonable. So throw that one of those in a gaming PC, and yes, please. Oh, I'll take the Titan X2, by the way.
Yeah, couple of Titan X's, 4K exo display, couple of those, one for OS, one for your Steam library, and you got a decent little PC going.
Yeah,
so
I might be okay.
And you actually brought me to one little caveat with this guy. NVMe is a fairly new technology, and as a result, a lot of legacy BIOS setups, whether they be UEFI or before that, God knows, but even the previous gen UEFI before Intel's X99 and Z97 chipset family, this card will have compatibility issues as a boot drive. So it will be recognized by the most up-to-date. You'd probably want to update your BIOS for this thing for an X99 board or a Z97 board. It will be recognized by the BIOS as a bootable drive, target drive. But we tried it in X79. I haven't tried it in Z87, but I think we'd probably see the same thing. We tried it in an X79 legacy motherboard, X79 chipset. Couple of them actually, and the only thing we could do was set it up as a secondary drive. We couldn't boot from it. So, little caveat there, you got to have sort of the latest platform. And the other thing that's important with these drives is you mentioned, Marco, multi-GPU setup there. When you put these cards in a slot, you want to have it hanging off of a North Bridge, which is CPU in this case for Intel. Northbridge PCI Express lane, so a by 4 Gen 3 that's up in the Northbridge and not downstream on a South Bridge, hanging off of a separate controller, the Southbridge controller, or what they call the platform controller hub now, Intel. And then it has to go over DMI, and it's not the same full bandwidth native PCI Express direct to CPU, link. So you'd want to have an X99 board in that case with 40 lanes of Gen 3 PCI Express available, where you can throw in a couple of graphics cards, by 16 graphics cards, and still have 8 lanes of Gen 3 left over. You'll be using up 32 in that case and have 8 lanes left over for something like this. In that case, you could use 2 of these because it's only a by 4 that it uses. So there.
Wow.
A little bit deep on that one. We got all geeky, but yeah, it's impressive stuff. And what's exciting to me is the price point, especially. I mean, you know, it's a cool little half-height card. I've got the full-height backplate bracket here, so it will go into a standard ATX chassis. But you know, nice and neat, super elegant design, very robust in terms of endurance, and then super fast. But now finally palatable for the mainstream market. You know, it's not, these things are no longer, PCI Express SSDs are no longer like an enterprise class, you know, multi-$1,000 affair. Less than $400 for the 400 gig right there.
Wow.
So let's see. I think we had one more SSD to talk about, a little bit more mainstream, right?
Yeah, let me hold it up. Dave just showed you like the Kig Dingling SSD, so here's OCZ's SSD. Yeah, I'm just kidding. This is the brand new OCZ Vector 180. This is the most recent SSD that OCZ launched, featuring their Barefoot 3 M00 controller. So as far as SSD, I'm sorry, as far as SATA SSDs go, it's actually pretty badass. So it hits that 550 megasecond limit Dave was talking about in terms of reads. Writes for the larger capacity drives in the family top out at about 530 megs a second. The 120 gig model, the base model, tops out at 450 megs a second. The drives are featuring the latest Toshiba 19 nanometer MLC NAND. So no, you know, it's not high-end SLC, and it's not the 3D NAND like Samsung's drives, but MLC NAND, and just a great all-around, strong-performing SATA SSD. If you compare all of the latest, most recently released high-end SATA SSDs, it's really tough to differentiate. You can look at the graphs in the article, and you can look at the charts, and you will see one is slightly faster here and there, but the deltas are so small, it's really imperceptible when you're using them. So they're all really strong SSDs at the high end right now, and this is one of OCZ's best. So across the board, competitive with the Samsung SSD 850s, which are one of my favorites, some of the fastest that you can get. And pricing is really competitive. That's where kind of OCZ is putting some pressure on. The 120 gig drive is technically the most expensive per gig. It's 75 cents a gig, but the 960 gig drive is only 52 cents. This one, what did I look at? This is the 480 gig. This is only 56 cents a gig, so 480 gig super fast SSD for about 270 bucks, 269 bucks. So strong, compatible, you know, technology inside OCZ's drive that's been out there for a while. You know, it's reliable tech. You can trust it. Will work in basically any form factor. 7mm Z height, standard 2.5-inch drive, affordable and fast. So that's the story there.
Austin, what do you have for storage in your? Do you have you work all on notebooks, or do you have a big workstation rig that you crunch your video on?
Yeah, I work on a few different computers. My gaming PC is still rocking it's an old 830, so yeah, I haven't updated in a little while. But yeah, no, I think I've been mostly spoiled, like I'm sure you guys have as well, by a lot of these new PCI Express SSDs. Like this MacBook Pro is benchmarking it. It was in like upwards of 1,300 megabytes read and write. So it's kind of hard. You go back to say it's like, oh, it's 15 megabytes faster. Woohoo! It's not some massive difference. And oh, did Dave just disappear?
I think he did. Uh-oh.
We can take over now.
We're still live, so we can still talk. I can do stupid stuff with the Titan X again.
Yes, that's exactly what we need. No, but I mean, I think SATA SSDs are kind of interesting right now because, like you said, it's kind of like they're all kind of hitting that same plateau of, oh, well, you know, this one's slightly faster here or there, but there's not a lot of differentiation, you know, at the moment. So I just find it's hard to get super excited when there's crazy stuff like that. Intel, you know, like the 750, just like 2 gigs. Ah!
And you know what? Actually, I failed to mention. One cool thing also OCZ launched alongside this drive. So they have, along with the new SSD, they have a new utility called the OCZ Guru utility, and that's going to replace their OCZ Tools application. and it basically it's a one-stop shop for all things SSD. You can update the firmware, secure erase, throw a trim command at it, check all the health data. Tons of cool. It even has options to tweak the OS settings for max performance. You could change the over provisioning if you want to, prolong the life of the drive. You can just change a slider for the over provisioning. So a really cool tool that came out alongside this drive. So for tweakers that want a nice SSD, it's also a cool option. Did
you guys see me evaporate there for a moment?
You did. We kept we just kept rocking.
What are you talking about?
Oh, gotta love Google Hangouts. Once in a while, it gets a little funky. So you have to excuse me there. Thanks for keeping the beat on. Keeping on the beat or something.
We didn't even notice you were gone. Maybe.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's talk real quick about one last thing before we head off into the sunset here. We actually introduced something kind of interesting at HotHardware.com lately. If you haven't stopped by the site, come on by and check it out. We introduced the HotHardware shop, and we've actually got a partnership with a company called Stack Social now, which allows us to bring to you some pretty cool stuff, some giveaways and promotions, sometimes cool stuff like MacBook Airs or the new MacBook. Actually, we have a giveaway going on right now with this shop vendor that we're working with, and but also, lots of other stuff on sale if you want to come by and check it out. Some interesting gizmos. Let me screen share this for you. So this is the new hardware shop, and as you can see, gadgets and gear in general. Pretty cool little multi-tool keychain thing there. But lots of other stuff. Lots of gadgets and gear. For your notebooks, for your PC, and then again we do some giveaways. So stop by because we're going to be doing some giveaways on a regular basis with our partner at the HotHardware shop, and we would love to have you with us. Join up. It's one of those things where you register and sign up, and we send you email once in a blue moon. Don't get obnoxious about it, and hopefully give away some stuff to the readers, and also offer a place for you to shop for your latest gadgets and gear and all that good stuff in the tech space. So, Austin, other than we know where we can, I'll tell the viewers where we can find HotHardware.com and our channel, but where can we find you besides all over YouTube? Or what's your YouTube domain, I guess?
So you guys can find me youtube.com/Austin Evans. You can just search Austin Evans, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, whatever it comes out tomorrow. I don't know.
Nice. Yes, Austin, thanks for joining us this week. It's great to have you. Can we make this a fairly regular occurrence?
Sure.
I think it would be good. We actually work with another guy, William Van Winkle, who I'm sure some of the readers have seen, and we'll have him on once in a while. We'll have Austin on once in a while. We'll have lots of half geeks. Maybe I'll take a back seat and be a half geek once in a while, mix it up a little bit. God knows I can do that. I got the lobotomy. Marco, anything to offer other than your smiling face right now? Because you look like you're about to say something that's gonna,
No, you know me. I'm always waiting to tell the next joke that's inappropriate for a podcast that's being broadcast publicly. So I will bite my tongue this time and just say thanks for watching. It was awesome having Austin with us. Get to hang out with Austin often when I'm covering trade events. He's a good guy. He's done some videos for us in the past, so definitely check out his stuff. And I'm going to throw it back to Dave to tell you all where to find us.
Yeah, so yeah, Austin, again, thanks very much. Thanks for joining us. If you would, here at YouTube, you're probably gonna check out the stream afterwards. Subscribe and give this a thumb up if you liked our little webcast here. We try and do this every week when we can. You can find us at HotHardware.com, of course, YouTube.com/HotHardwareVids, Twitter.com/HotHardware, Facebook.com/HotHardware. G+, yeah, we're definitely there too. It's actually /+/HotHardware, whatever, blah blah. Just search HotHardware. They make it too hard for you on G+. And yeah, that's about it. It's good to have Austin with us. It's good to finally be back in the webcast saddle. And Austin, thanks for joining us, and thanks for stopping by, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Peace. Take care.
See you later.